The most dangerous killer in any investigation isn't always the person holding the weapon. It's the lie they leave behind. Imagine walking into a bedroom and seeing a man hanging from a belt on a closet rod. There's a note, a tipped-over chair, and a nearly empty bottle of whiskey. It screams suicide until you look closer. The knot on the belt doesn't match how he'd have to tie it. Dust is wiped clean around the chair legs. And the note, printed from a computer, no impressions on the desk below. This is crime scene staging, a deliberate attempt to mislead detectives, to rewrite the story of what really happened. In this video, we're going behind the yellow tape to see how investigators cut through the performance, spot faked details fast, and reconstruct the truth hidden underneath a carefully staged lie. Staged crime scenes are one of the oldest tricks in the criminal playbook, and one of the most dangerous traps for investigators. A staged scene is any crime scene deliberately altered to mislead. A murder dressed up as a suicide, a domestic killing disguised as a break-in, an overdose arranged to look like an accident. Detectives have to decide quickly, is what I'm seeing real or somebody's performance? That decision shapes everything that follows. What evidence is collected, which experts are called, even how witnesses are questioned. In this episode, we'll break down the specific red flags professionals look for, the psychology behind staging, and the forensic tools that expose the truth. If you love understanding how real investigations work, you're in the right place. Stick with me until the end for a brief checklist you can use when analyzing cases. And if you enjoy this kind of deep dive, consider subscribing and hitting the bell so you don't miss future breakdowns. To understand staging, you first need to understand what a real crime scene looks like. Genuine scenes tend to be messy, chaotic, and inconsistent. Emotions erupt, victims fight back, offenders panic, things break by accident. The environment reflects spontaneity, not symmetry. Detectives talk about the natural disorder of authentic violence, random blood drops, uneven damage, objects knocked over in believable paths. In contrast, staged scenes often look a bit too neat or a bit too theatrical. Think of a room where only the jewelry drawer is dumped out, but dust on the TV is untouched, or a suicide note perfectly centered on a clear desktop. Real scenes rarely look like movie sets, staged ones often do. So, investigators start with a mental baseline. If nobody had touched this room after the crime, what kind of chaos would I reasonably expect? Any departure from that natural pattern becomes a candidate for closer scrutiny. One of the most common types of staging is the fake suicide. Offenders hope that if it's labeled self-inflicted, the case closes quickly and scrutiny ends. Detectives, however, approach alleged suicides with a quiet skepticism. They study the method. Can the person physically have done this with the tools and position present? Hanging scenes raise questions about ligature marks, lividity, and how the body is suspended. Gunshot suicides prompt careful checks of gun distance, angle, and residue on hands. Is there a believable psychological context? History of depression, threats, or notes that sound authentically personal rather than generic? Investigators also examine whether the environment supports a spontaneous decision or looks prepared. A meticulously cleaned space, valuables secured, or an oddly formal note can signal performance. The key question becomes, does everything in this room line up with a person taking their own life, or with someone trying to convince us that's what happened? If fake suicides are common, staged burglaries might be even more frequent. These scenes are meant to scream, "Stranger did this," not someone close. Detectives walk into homes where drawers are yanked open, closet doors stand wide, and valuables are conveniently missing. But real burglars behave according to opportunity and efficiency. They gravitate toward electronics, portable valuables, easily fenced items, and they move quickly. Staging often overplays chaos, every drawer dumped, clothes scattered, but expensive items oddly left behind. Forced entry is another giveaway. Window glass on the wrong side of the frame, tool marks that don't match the supposed instrument, or door damage inconsistent with the story. Investigators also check the timeline. Alarms, neighbors, phone data. Did the victim have inside knowledge, financial stress, or relationship conflict? that might give them a motive to fake a break-in. When the disorder feels theatrical instead of targeted, detectives start thinking staging. To see through staging quickly, detectives think in terms of behavioral consistency. Does what the scene shows match how people actually behave under stress, fear, or greed? Consider a supposed robbery homicide where a wallet and phone are missing, but sentimental items, rare collectibles, or high-end electronics remain. That inconsistency makes no sense if the motive was theft, or an alleged intruder attack where there's no sign of struggle near entry points but a dramatic fight scene in the bedroom only. Investigators also compare the scene to the suspect's story. Does the way a spouse claims to have found the body match blood patterns, rigor mortis, and item placement? Are injuries consistent with the described weapon and sequence of events? When the narrative and the physical evidence don't line up, something's being edited. Staging is at its core storytelling with objects, and detectives are trained to spot plot holes. Bloodstain pattern analysis is one of the fastest ways to expose a staged scene. Blood behaves according to physics, not alibis. Analysts study size, shape, direction, and distribution of stains to infer motion, force, and timing. In a genuine attack, you might see cast-off patterns from swinging a weapon, arterial spurts from a severed vessel, or voids where a body or object blocked the spray. Staging often introduces contradictions. Blood pools under a body that was clearly moved, white marks that don't match any plausible effort to render aid, high-velocity spatter found far from any impact point. Investigators also watch for clean items that should be dirty, like a perfectly spotless light switch in a blood-soaked room. Even small transfer stains, like a bloody handprint on a doorframe at the wrong height, can reveal that someone rearranged things after the violence. Blood tells a timeline, and staged scenes rarely honor it accurately. Another powerful clue is the difference between pre-crime and post-crime actions visible in the scene. Genuine offenders under pressure tend to focus on escape and immediate survival, not perfect theater. Staging, on the other hand, often shows calculated behaviors after the fact, carefully placing items, rearranging furniture, even changing the victim's clothing. Detectives look for signs of cleaning in specific zones, swirled mop marks, diluted blood in grout, or unusual use of air fresheners and candles. They also examine whether objects look naturally used or artificially positioned. A coffee cup with no lip prints, a knocked-over chair sitting perfectly upright on its side, or a photo frame turned face down while dust rings remain untouched. All suggest someone curated the scene. Time-sensitive evidence like body temperature, rigor mortis, and insect activity can also reveal that the scene doesn't match the claimed discovery time, undermining the staged narrative. Staging isn't just physical, it's psychological. To fake a scene convincingly, an offender must imagine what police expect to see. Their assumptions, fears, and limited knowledge all leak into the crime scene. Detectives exploit this by asking, "What was the stager afraid we'd think?" Overkill staging often points to intimate offenders, spouses or family, who are desperate to redirect suspicion towards strangers. They might overemphasize sexual elements, break windows, or scatter valuables, mirroring TV crime tropes more than real criminal behavior. Forensic psychologists look at whether the staging aligns with the known personality of the suspect. Is a normally meticulous person suddenly claiming they left doors unlocked and valuables everywhere? Is a controlling partner now insisting they never asked any questions about their spouse's whereabouts? The emotional tone of the staging, panic, calculation, or theatrics, can be as revealing as the physical missteps. Technology has made it both easier and harder to stage crime scenes. On one hand, offenders can Google how to fake a suicide or binge-watch forensic shows picking up fragments of technique. On the other, digital evidence quietly records their real behavior. Detectives now cross-check staged physical scenes with phone GPS data, smart home logs, vehicle telematics, and even fitness trackers. A suspect who claims to have been asleep during a nighttime burglary might have their steps tracked pacing the hallway. Security cameras can show who actually moved objects, and even deleted footage leaves forensic traces. Browser histories revealing research on staging methods become extremely damaging in court. So investigators don't just ask, "Does this room look right?" They ask, "Does this room match the digital footprint of everyone involved?" When the crime scene story and the data's story disagree, staging becomes the leading explanation. Staged vehicle accidents are another subtle category. These range from insurance fraud setups to murders disguised as crashes. Detectives and collision reconstruction experts examine whether damage to the car, injuries to occupants, and the environment all tell the same story. A car supposedly runs off the road at high speed, but there are no yaw marks, no broken vegetation, and minimal front-end impact. A driver is found thrown from the vehicle, yet injuries suggest they were already dead before the collision. Seatbelt marks, windshield damage at specific heights, and airbag deployment patterns are all compared against claimed seating positions. Blood inside the car that doesn't match the alleged timeline, or inconsistent glass dispersal, can expose that a body was placed post-crash. Offenders may understand superficial aspects of accidents, but reconstructors live in the details, and that's where most staging falls apart. One key skill in spotting staging fast is recognizing overcompensation. True offenders under time pressure usually do the bare minimum to avoid obvious detection. Stagers, by contrast, often do too much. They add layers of drama, multiple fake entry points, exaggerated struggles, or over-the-top clues pointing to a specific type of criminal. Detectives are wary when a scene seems to be shouting its own explanation, like an apartment slathered in gang graffiti when there's no gang activity in the area, or a supposed ritual killing with conveniently placed candles and symbols. Investigators also probe whether the suspect's emotional responses are aligned with the scene. Someone who has allegedly just discovered a loved one brutally murdered, yet can calmly walk detectives through a hyper-detailed narrative about intruders, may have rehearsed the story as carefully as they arranged the room. Despite all these tools, detectives know they can't assume staging or authenticity too quickly. Confirmation bias is a real danger. That's why many departments now use structured decision-making, checklists, peer reviews, and crime scene walkthroughs with fresh eyes. A second team might revisit the scene later, asking, "If we didn't know the suspect's story, what would we think happened here?" Specialists, bloodstain analysts, medical examiners, digital forensic experts contribute independent perspectives that either reinforce or weaken the staging hypothesis. Occasionally, what looks staged at first turns out to be genuine, shaped by panicked family members moving the body or well-meaning neighbors cleaning. Distinguishing malicious staging from innocent interference is crucial. Good investigators keep their ego out of it and let the totality of evidence, not hunches, decide whether a scene is a lie, a tragedy, or a bit of both. Let's pull everything together into a quick mental framework you can use when you hear about suspicious cases. First, ask, does the overall scene look naturally chaotic or oddly theatrical? Real violence is messy and imperfect. Staging often feels curated. Second, check consistency. Do injuries, blood patterns, damage, and object placement all support the same story? Third, consider motive. Who benefits from the scene being interpreted a certain way? Suicide instead of homicide, stranger attack instead of domestic. Fourth, think about effort. Does the amount of crime in the room match what a real offender with limited time would realistically do? Finally, remember digital context. Phones, cameras, and logs often expose the truth behind a staged environment. Detectives combine all of this with training and experience, but the underlying logic is accessible. Once you see how staging works, you'll never look at a crime scene description in the news the same way again. If you've made it this far, you now understand more about crime scene staging than most casual true crime fans. You've seen how detectives question suicides, dissect fake burglaries, read bloodstain physics, and use digital footprints to expose lies. The next time you hear a news report or watch a crime series, you'll be able to ask sharper questions. Does this scene feel authentic or like someone's carefully crafted story? If you want more videos that break down real investigative thinking without the TV fluff, this is where we do it. Take a second to subscribe and tap the notification bell so you don't miss upcoming episodes on interrogation tactics, forensic myths, and case breakdowns. Drop a comment with a famous case you suspect involved staging or one you'd like us to analyze in a future video. And if you found this valuable, sharing it helps more people see past the yellow tape and into the truth behind the scene.